So everyone, thanks so much for listening. If you're a first-time listener, please subscribe to this podcast. We really appreciate it. We're trying to get this out to as many people as possible because we have wonderful guests and we have a returning guest, and we brought her back because she was so wonderful last time. I don't even remember last time, Doc, you were on here, but I think it was like 20, maybe 18 on 19, something like that. But it's been quite a while. So we're bringing her back to bring the truth and insight back to the program. Again, Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith on, and she's going to be talking about rest and many other things. Doc, thanks so much for coming back on. Greatly appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rob.
So can we talk about this? There's been a lot of stress lately. I should say not even lately, the past 2 years. And due to that, people are struggling to get their rest, physical rest, mental rest, emotional rest. What have you been seeing throughout the COVID pandemic as far as people with rest?
Yeah, so what I'm finding is most people really did not have an understanding of what rest is. And so they thought, oh, my life will be great if I can work from home and, get out of bed in my pajamas and go to work. And what I think a lot of people found very quickly is that in itself isn't how we kind of stay well rested and stay stress-free. I think for most of us, what we found is that actually is more stress inducing than just going into work and having those hard and fast boundaries around our work and life schedules. So there was a lot of kind of looking into, for a lot of people, looking into how do I actually balance work and life? Is balance even a thing? Or do I really need to focus my attention more on integration?
How can we use these 7 types of rest to become better human beings?
Yeah, so that's the bulk of the research that I do right now is based around these 7 types of rest. And I'll just name them up front so people kind of, they're not like, what are the 7? So the 7 include physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, social, sensory, and creative. And the thing that most people first have to understand is that when they say something like I'm tired or I'm drained or I'm fatigued, that's not very helpful for them or for their physician or anyone else who's trying to work with them, because it doesn't really classify where the real issue is. It's no different than someone coming to me in my office and saying, hey, doc, I have a pain. Okay, you have a pain. What am I supposed to do about that? Where's the pain? How do I even know what test to order unless you're more specific? And I think that's where many people have to start. Rather than just saying they're tired, try to specify what kind of tired they are. Where is the rest deficit at? Because once you can kind of narrow down which of those 7 is the area that's getting drained or that's feeling kind of fatigued, then you can actually be very intentional about doing a restorative activity to pour back into the place where there's the deficit. You mentioned like emotions. Let's say someone has had a death in their family, or something happened that stirred up, maybe they lost their job, something that stirred up their emotions. And so they're either depressed or anxious or whatever it may be, or grieving, whatever it may be. Though that emotional rest that's needed are those opportunities to be able to express that and not feel like they have to keep it in or hold it together so that their family or their loved ones don't see it. And so you can sleep all day long, and that's not going to solve that rest deficit. It's actually going to make it worse, because you have even less opportunities to connect with people who are actually restorative in that process. So, that's the thing. I think too often we're getting the wrong type of rest, and we're wondering why rest doesn't work. I sat in front of the TV and I vegged out Netflix for 15 hours. Why do I not feel any better? That's not going to really help you if your problem is you need mental rest. You need for your mind to kind of be cleared and not, processing a lot of information.
Well, Doc, isn't there a different types of sleep too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that's very true. With sleep, there's different levels of sleep that we go into. And many times we don't get to the restorative levels of sleep. The non-REM sleep portion has stages 1 through 4, up to 5, depending on which, experts can't all agree on one thing, right? So there's either 4 or 5, depending on which expert you want to listen to. But regardless, most of us, we experience that restorative process around stage 3 of sleep, of non-REM sleep. So stage 1 is kind of, if you've ever had kids, stage 1 is when the baby rolls over and you wake up immediately. It's like any little thing's going to wake you up. Stage 2, the baby has to scream one time and then you wake up. Stage 3, the baby's screaming for like 5 minutes and you wake up and you're like, where am I at? Who's that? And then eventually you wake up. Stage 4 is if you've ever had a child that fell asleep in the car and you pick them up and they're like a rag doll and you're like, how can anybody sleep through all of this? That's stage 4. That's the deepest levels of sleep. That's stage 4, stage 5 range. Now, the problem is most adults never get to stage 4 for long periods of time because it takes a certain level of just unbelievable trust in the world to get to that level of just deep, comatose, people are carrying me around and I don't know it kind of sleep. Now, the great news, you don't have to get there. That's the good news. You only have to get to stage 3.
But is it a lot because, you know, we're on our phones constantly? We hear all this stuff about this blue light and how it really affects our sleep. Everybody and their brother and sister brings the cell phone to bed and they're playing on Instagram or Facebook, checking emails, doing work in bed. And obviously that's going to mess up our rest and our sleep in general. So is that a real huge thing, or is that just kind of like something that they're just talking about that's not 100% true?
It's worse for some people versus others. If you're someone who's already an overthinker, an overprocessor, in other words, you lay in bed and your brain won't shut up. Your brain's going through all the thoughts, all the ideas, and it just won't clear out. Then anything you do that adds to that kind of overprocessing mind is going to make it very hard to go to sleep because your brain already wants to kind of just hold on to everything. That's why for people who have that mental rest deficit can really benefit from what we call brain dumping, writing down, or, you know, even if you want to use your phone, use it to dictate whatever that is running around in your head, whatever that thought is, so that you can dump that information out of your head into something concrete so that your brain will let it go.
Well, I even read, and then I usually, this is bad, I fall asleep with all the lights on while I'm reading like 3 or 4 pages. So that helps me, I guess, you know, and some people, like you said, write their thoughts out, and that may help them too. We all have different habits that help.
Yeah.
So I want to get into the last thing before I get into the book. You know, you talk about 3 daytime practices that can help you sleep better at night. When I hear that, I think of meditation right away. I think of working out, and that's about kind of where I end. Is that what you're saying, those 2 things? And what would be the third thing, or is there other things that you're thinking of?
Yeah, so the first part of that, the 3 daytime things that people can do to start kind of helping themselves. The first one is doing a quick body analysis during the day. A lot of times people, by the time they go to bed, they're already hurting. Their head hurts, their back hurts, their leg hurts, you know, whatever it is. And they don't really have time to even address it because it's bedtime now. So during the day, you know, if you're working on your computers for long periods of time, rather than doing what most of us typically do, you know, your neck starts hurting while you're working, you just tell your neck to shut up. I got to get done with this work, this email I'm doing, and you keep pushing through. Whereas if you just took a couple of minutes to, you know, do some shoulder shrugs or you know, stretches or yoga or whatever it is, just a couple of minutes to undo those kinks in the moment, you would actually help yourself sleep better because your body wouldn't be so wound up by the time you go to bed. The second thing is, like as you mentioned, doing something that helps clear your mind. Now, for some people, that could be exercise. A lot of people get mental rest when they're jogging, because when they're jogging, physically, they're not resting, right? Jogging is activity, but their mind focuses on their breathing and their cadence. It clears out the clutter to focus in on the activity at hand, which can be a way of actually doing mindfulness techniques without having it be kind of, you know, otherworldly. You're doing it in the process of an activity you enjoy. And then the last thing is to automate as many restorative practices as possible. And by that, what I mean is, if you're someone who likes to be on your computer or your gadgets, you know, late in the evening, automate them so that they help you to wind down. So set your computer to dim the lights after 6 p.m. The computer, instead of being at full brightness, maybe it's at 50%. You can do the same thing with your phone. You can have it go to a night setting at a certain time. So even though you're not, really being intentional necessarily in the moment, you've already automated the process so that your gadgets and things that you're using actually help your body prepare for sleep and to ease into that stage.
Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith here on Fire Breathing Rob. Again, the website is ichoosemybestlife.com. I want to go into the book. Again, Sacred Rest. Definitely check it out. Again, Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith. You can go to the website. Again, ichoosemybestlife.com. Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith, let's talk about this. So going into the book, what made you want to write this book, and what are you hoping people get out of it when they read it?
Well, what made me want to write it? I burned out. So I was in practice for about 6 years when I had both my children. They came back to back, 21 months apart. So I had an extremely busy practice and 2 newborns, basically, a 2-year-old and a newborn. And I burned out. I mean, it was one of those situations where I'm in the house of my dreams, married to the man of my dreams, with the kids I've been praying for, in the career I'd spent my entire life working to get into. And I'm like, if this is success, I want none of it, because it did not feel good to live. And, in that moment, I was like, if I did all of this work to get to this point, then there has to be other things I can do to get to a better place. And so I started kind of looking at the research. Initially, I thought, okay, I'm just tired, new mom, doctor, I just need sleep. Then I started so I really initially started studying sleep. And so I was getting like 8-9 hours of solid sleep, like documented, like in the sleep lab with the electrodes on my head, documented high quality sleep. And I would wake up still exhausted. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So if sleep is not fixing it, then something else is drained. And I need to figure out what that is, or I'm not going to be able to survive this season of my life. And what I found for myself is that I was really missing the emotional and social rest parts of it. Going in, telling people they have cancer, telling family members, I'm sorry, there's nothing more I can do, do for your family at this time. I really hadn't taken into account how much of an emotional labor that required of me, because, sometimes I'm treating patients that I've seen for years, and I'm telling them hard things, but I can't cry in the middle of that, right? So I'm keeping it together, but that doesn't remove the fact that I'm an empath. I'm a very sensitive type person. So I was taking on all of that with no release. And it was literally killing me, not having an outlet to be able to release that. So I had to get just very real about my own personality. And, I need those people in my life. I need a counselor or a therapist or whoever it is, where I can say, this was a rough week. COVID killed 15 people and we're going to do a thing about it. There's stuff you have to be able to tell someone. I can't tell my family that, because that's traumatic for for your family to have to hear something like that. But a therapist could absorb that, because that's what their job is. And I needed to recognize that, each of us need to really identify what areas of our life do we drain that maybe we're not even cognitively aware that we're draining. But that rest deficit is keeping us feeling in a kind of a depressed or suppressed state. So,
Doc, what do you hope people learn from this interview, and obviously the book, of course, too?
Yeah, my hope is that the book really gives people an opportunity to self-diagnose some areas that maybe they just thought were hopeless. Sometimes you feel like, okay, the doctor didn't find anything wrong with me. I'm still tired. It must just be in my head. Chances are it's not just in your head, it's that you haven't identified what type of tired you are. So you're not getting the right type of rest. And because of that, you have a chronic rest deficit that just simply is not getting solved.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And I think, if, like you said, if someone says it's just in your head, there's more there's more exploration that you need to do. I'm struggling. I have to edit that part up. Anyways, well, I think I better end here. Again, for people, okay. Again, for people that want to hear more about Dr. Dalton Smith, go to ichoosemybestlife.com. Again, Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith here on Fire Breathing Rob. Definitely check out the book. It's Sacred Rest. It's in all bookstores, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Anything else where they could find you on social media besides the website or?
Yeah, I'm everywhere at Dr. Dalton Smith on Instagram, Facebook, and I welcome them to check out the free resource at restquiz.com. We've had over 250,000 people who've taken the assessment. It basically lets you know which of the 7 types of rest you're most efficient in. So you don't have to guess. You can kind of specifically narrow down on the one that you need most.
All right. Again, Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith here on Fire Breathing Rob. Thanks so much for your time. We look forward to having you on again sometime soon.